Hi everyone, welcome back to Java 1 for All. In this video we are going to talk about inner classes. So let's create a new package, and actually we are already at Z. Let's do some hacky package name. Let's call this ZZA inner classes dot test, so we can keep following the order. Now let's create a Java class here, and let's call it first outer classes test 01. Okay, so what is inner classes? Basically, inner class is just a class inside another class. And why was that created? Basically, this was created for Java, the Java version used at desktop, the Java Standard Edition. Imagine, for example, you have a chat UI. Usually, you have the UI, you have the input fields where you can type your message, and you have behaviors. These behaviors, they are related to the buttons, for example. So if you press send, you should send a message. If you click on close, you should close the chat, and so on. So basically, you have different behaviors that are tightly tied together. So it's like they are at the same time tightly coupled, but at the same time they should be separate. So for example, you should have one class that will deal with the UI and another class that will deal with behaviors of that UI. But the behaviors of this UI should not exist without the UI itself. So that's why we have inner classes that are basically just imagine that they are kind of like methods, but way more powerful. And they use, it's again, very specific frameworks. They use it a lot. We are going to use for real when we talk about design patterns, especially the builder design pattern. And here I just want you to understand how it works and some syntax, because it's a little bit different from everything that we have seen so far. Okay, so we have just a regular class, and I will create here an attribute. For example, private string name, and I will give a nice name here. Let me see. Monkey D Luffy. So this is just one attribute that belongs to my outer class. Now I want to create an inner class. The syntax is pretty straightforward. Class inner, and then you have a class that is inside the outer class. So as you can see, we are at the same level as the main method. We were, before this class, we were creating outside, but now we are creating inside the class. And this is just a regular class. We can have methods, and one of the most useful things is that you have access to all the attributes from the outer class, even though they are private. So for example, we have this method, public void print outer class attribute, and I'm going to print the name. Now this is an internal class, and this is my main method. So since we have a class here, we can create objects, but since we are inside of the main method, you cannot do something like this, new inner. And why is that? Because this is not static. This is similar to if you had a method that's not static, you should not be able, actually it's not should, you are not able to call this method print here. If this method was static, then you would be able to call this method. So basically this is kind of like a method, so the same rules apply here. Okay, so we have this object, actually we have this class, and how can we get an object of this class? You need an outer class object, so you can have access to the inner class and you can create an inner class object. For example, let's create here outer class, new outer class. So now we have an object that is this outer class, and from this object we can call outer dot, and this is where it gets a bit weird, new, and then the name of the class. Introduce local variable, and as you can see, we have inner, that is the inner class we have. Now the syntax here is pretty simple, but sometimes you will see something like this. Basically the name of the outer class dot then the inner class. So don't get scared when you see something like this. And this works like any other method. You just call, for example, Ctrl+Shift+F10, and you have access to the name. So this is one way of creating this, but imagine that you don't have the object. That is another way to create. Basically, you can use like this, and this will technically create an object, and you can just call new directly from here, and then inner again. So basically this, I'm just reusing the same reference variable, but you have the object in the same way as we have here. So two ways to achieve the same result. Now, imagine that we have literally this. Remember that this is always having a reference to the object, and now you have an object inside another object. So this is going to have a reference to inner or to outer. Let's see, Ctrl+Shift+F10. And as you can see, it has a reference to the inner class. So this will always use the reference of the object that it is being referenced. In this case, since we are creating inside the inner class, that's why we have this syntax. You have the outer class, and then you have the $sign, and then inner. So it's pretty common seeing these patterning frameworks, and you know that you are working with inner classes. So how can we actually have a reference to this from the outer class, from the outer object? Basically, just call the name of the class dot this. Ctrl+Shift+F10, and you have access to the outside object. So basically, that's it for an introduction of inner classes. Remember, this is like any attribute, any method. So you can have here different access modifiers: private, public, protected, the default, the package access, and also you can have static inner classes, something that we are going to talk later. So that's it for an introduction. Let's continue in the next video. Bye.